Welcome to our 12th episode of Child Sexual Abuse Prevention by Zina podcast. I'm your host, Zina Poncel. Hey, everybody. Today's podcast is part 2 of Child on Child Body Curiosity or Sexual Abuse. Part 1 dropped last week, which was episode 11, and it focused on normal childhood curiosity involving those little bodies. If you haven't listened to it, you might want to go back and check it out first before listening to this one. The main subject of these 2 podcasts in regard to child sexual abuse is what some professionals may refer to as child on child. This is where the alleged victim and the alleged offender or perpetrator are both children. My goal is to help you understand and learn the difference between a child being curious about another child's body and children sexually abusing each other. As I've said before, yes, there is a difference. Part 2, which is this podcast, will focus on when one child is sexually abusing another child. I will go over the concerning child-on-child behaviors, what to look out for, why they may be doing the behavior, and other information regarding a child offender. This information is a combination of data from various different sources, which are mainly RAINN, it's RAINN, Stop It Now, Darkness to Light, and the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. The links to all of these websites is in our podcast description at the very bottom. These are great resources. I highly encourage you to check out their websites. Also, in the past, I've spoken of children's advocacy centers. Some of the statistical data you'll hear me talk about are generated from data collected from all of the child advocacy centers, submitted and compiled through the National Child Advocacy Center, also known as the NCAC. And then that information is sent out to different organizations across the nation, which is where they get their data from. I really hope this information helps parents, educators, and caregivers respond appropriately and provide the necessary support for all children involved. As always, you can email me at csapreventionbyzina@gmail.com with any questions or comments, or if you have some valuable information you would like to contribute to these podcasts in the protection of children from child sexual abuse. All righty, here we go. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of statistical data just to kind of get us into this and get your mindset kind of set on what we're talking about here. So child-on-child sexual abuse is a significant but often unrecognized issue. Research indicates that approximately 1/3 of all sexual abuse cases involving children are perpetrated by other children or adolescents. In year 2022, data from children advocacy centers, which are also noted as CACs, revealed that 21% of alleged abusers in child abuse cases were themselves children, with 14% being teenagers, age 13 to 17, and 7% under the age of 13. Stop It Now, which is that website that I mentioned earlier, reports that children as young as 4 or 5 may engage in harmful sexual behaviors without fully understanding the implications. Typically, but not always, the abuser is older than the victim. This kind of abuse can be difficult to identify and often goes unreported due to the confusion and discomfort of the victims. According to RAINN, which is that other website, that's RAINN, that I would highly encourage you to go check out, the vast majority of child sexual abuse victims know their abuser. The statistics highlight that 59% of perpetrators are acquaintances, 34% are family members, and only 7% are strangers. This reinforces the importance of addressing inappropriate behaviors early and educating children about boundaries and consent. Now, the stats right there from RAINN that I just went over, that includes all ages of offenders. Okay, that's not child on child. That's children offenders as well as adult offenders, to my understanding, based on these stats. So efforts to address and prevent child-on-child sexual abuse include providing effective treatment and education. Children advocacy centers report a high success rate, with 98% of children who receive treatment for problematic sexual behaviors not reoffending. So that's a plus. That's a good sign. Okay, I'm going to go over some signs of some problematic behavior. So you have frequency and intensity, impact on other children, inappropriate context, coercion and manipulation, significant age or developmental differences, secrecy and shame, sexual acts beyond normal curiosity. So I'm going to kind of take these and break them down each. Frequency and intensity would be like persistent, repetitive, and escalating sexual behaviors that are not typical for a child's developmental stage, which generally indicates a problem. As far as impact on other children, if the behavior causes distress, fear, or harm to the other child, it is likely abusive. Healthy exploration does not typically lead to negative emotional responses. Inappropriate context, sexual behaviors that occur or in inappropriate settings, such as like bathrooms, public places, during school activities. The behaviors are not easily redirected or stopped by adults. Those behaviors are problematic. Coercion or manipulation. Child sexual abuse involves one child using power, threats, bribes, or manipulation to engage another child in sexual activity. The behavior is not mutual, but forced or coerced. Okay, significant age or developmental differences. Typically, there's a noticeable age or developmental difference between the perpetrator and the victim. This imbalance contributes to the abusive nature of the interaction. Secrecy and shame. Abusive behaviors often involve secrecy, threats, or instructions not to tell anyone. You know, they say, let's keep it secret. This is our secret. The victim may feel confused, maybe feel guilty or shame about the interactions that took place. Sexual acts beyond normal curiosity. Abusive behaviors include sexual acts that go beyond developmentally appropriate curiosity. I think I mentioned that earlier too under frequency and intensity, such as genital contact, oral genital contact. When I say that, I'm referencing the mouth. Yes, I said that. Oral or the mouth in genital contact or penetration. These behaviors are not typical for age-appropriate exploration and are harmful. The most common type of child-on-child sexual abuse involves the older child or adolescent engaging in inappropriate sexual behaviors with the younger child, which I mentioned that earlier. This often includes the acts such as touching, fondling, or engaging in sexual acts that the younger child, again, does not understand. The abuse can occur between siblings, friends, or peers, and is frequently characterized by an age or power difference, as mentioned earlier, between the perpetrator and the victim. You have inappropriate touching, you have exposure to pornography, you have penetrative acts. I'm just going to go over those briefly. So under inappropriate touching, and I already mentioned touching and fondling, but this is the most common form where the older child touches the genitalia or other private parts of the younger child. Okay, exposure to pornography. So sometimes older children expose younger children to pornography and then mimic the behavior seen in those materials. Okay? Penetrative acts, though less common, there are cases where older children engage in more severe forms of abuse, including penetration. Now, when I say penetration, I'm fixing to kind of explain it a little bit. I'll be careful when I explain it, but I'm going to explain a little bit. So when I say penetration, there's a few different forms of it, and I'm going to be very blunt, okay? So as far as penetration, it could be the penis or a different object entering the vagina or the anus, which would be anal penetration. So just want to let you know about that. Generally, when children are exploring, their bodies, rarely is there penetration. So if there's any kind of a penetration, generally that has to do with sex. That is sexual abuse. That is sexual abuse, okay? Let me just put that out there. So addressing these behaviors involves educating children about consent and appropriate boundaries, and I can't stress that enough, as well as providing support and intervention for both victims and perpetrators to prevent the reoccurrence and to address the underlying issue, which I'll get into that in a little bit. So how do we help the child victim? So if a child is sexually abused by another child, it's crucial to take immediate and appropriate actions to ensure the safety and well-being of the victim and address the behavior of the perpetrator child. But right now we're going to focus on the victim child. So here's some of the steps to follow. First and foremost, I would call 911. I would call law enforcement. If there's a child advocacy center in the area, generally they're going to refer you to that. Now, that's within the United States. So I know different countries. And thank you guys for listening to me from different countries. That just warms my heart. But I'm not sure what their protocol is as far as child sexual abuse over there. But I'll be happy to research your country. Just shoot me an email at the email I provided earlier, and I'll see if I can provide you with some information in that aspect. But anyway, generally, immediately I would call 911 and make the report. Now, trust me, if a child is abusing your child, they're also abusing other children. That also tells me that the perpetrator child has probably been sexually abused. So more than likely, there's an older child or an adult, or this child's been exposed to some form of abuse or traumatic event for them to be acting out on the victim child. Okay, let me get back where I'm supposed to be. I can get off my tangent a little bit there. All right, so ensure the child's safety, remove the child from any immediate danger, and ensure that they're safe and in a supportive environment. Provide emotional support. You need to comfort the child, reassure the child that they're not to blame for what happened. And keep in mind, a perpetrator, whether it be a child offender or an adult offender, often will tell the child it's their fault, the victim child it's their fault, and therefore the child may be afraid to say anything. So it's really important that you let them know this is not your fault, you're not to blame. So, and listen to them. If they're ready to talk, listen without judgment or disbelief. Report the abuse, contact local child protective services, law enforcement, or child advocacy center. And generally, like I said, in the United States, generally what you do is call DFACS or the law enforcement 911, and they would generally send you to the child advocacy center. And at that child advocacy center, usually you'll have a child forensic interview will be done, as well as the medical exam. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop, generally. Okay, but you do whatever they tell you to do. You do whatever the professionals tell you to do. All right. Okay. So reporting the abuse is crucial for the protection of the child and for accessing professional help. And then again, we're seeking professional help. So arrange for the child to receive medical attention and a professional evaluation from a pediatrician, child psychologist, or a specialist in child sexual abuse. This is important both for the physical and mental health. Again, if you're referred to a child advocacy center, often they will cover all of those little pieces of the puzzle, okay? But if you don't have one in your area, or if you're in a different country, again, generally the professionals that you are reporting the abuse to will send you to wherever you need to go, okay? So, and avoid confronting the perpetrator. Do not confront the child who committed the abuse directly, as this can complicate the situation. Instead, let the professionals handle the investigation and intervention. You focus on your child. Now, you're sitting here thinking, okay, what if it's child on child and they're siblings and they both live in my house? Now what do I do? Okay, you're going to be able to take care of both your children, and both of them may end up going through a forensic interview because they probably need to find out why the perpetrator child is acting out on other kids. Again, there might be a history of sexual abuse with that you might be unaware of. Anyway, I'll get all into that in a little bit. Implement a safety plan. Work with professionals to develop a safety plan to prevent further abuse. This might include supervision guidelines, changes in living arrangements, or restrictions on contact between the children involved. Provide counseling and therapy. Both the victim and the child who committed the abuse may benefit from counseling. Therapy can help the victim process their trauma and assist the perpetrator in understanding and correcting their behavior. Educate about healthy boundaries. Teach all children involved about appropriate boundaries, consent, and respectful interactions. This education can help prevent future incidents. Monitor and follow up. Continue to monitor the situation and maintain follow-up appointments with professionals to ensure the child's recovery and ongoing safety. Seek legal guidance if necessary. In some cases, it may be necessary to seek legal advice to understand your rights and the best course of action to protect your child. So, can a child heal from being sexually abused by another child? Yes. A child can heal from being sexually abused by another child, but the healing process often requires time, support, and appropriate interventions. Healing involves addressing both the emotional and psychological impact of the abuse. So here are some key factors and steps that can aid in the healing process. You have immediate support and safety, professional counseling and therapy, family support, school and community resources, education on healthy boundaries, patience, and understanding. And that's pretty huge. All right, so I'm going to pop up here to the top one, immediate support and safety. Ensuring the child's immediate safety and providing a supportive and nurturing environment are crucial first steps. This helps the child feel secure and starts the healing process. And again, some of this might be repetitive with what I've already mentioned, but it kind of goes into this category now. So professional counseling and therapy with a mental health professional who specializes in child trauma and sexual abuse can be highly beneficial. Techniques such as trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which is TFCBT, have been shown to be effective in helping children process and recover from abuse. Now, if you go to a counselor and they say, oh, we're going to do play therapy, you're going, what? Play therapy? Trust me, they know what they're doing. And this can be all based on the age of the child. The play therapy component of it is very beneficial, okay? And don't just take them to one session. Please go to several sessions. And often the parent or the caregiver or guardian, the counselor or therapist will also speak with them, maybe individually first, and then maybe speak with the parent, with you and your child together. And they'll help provide you with coping skills on how to help your child. Say when you're not at the counselor's office, when you're at home. But again, they can provide you with ways to respond to your child if questions come up, or if you see anger management problems may develop from the trauma, and different behaviors may kick in. They might become real introverted. So it's very important that you, as well as your child, go to this counselor or therapist, okay? It'll help you all work together to work through the problem. You have family support. A strong support system within the family is vital. Parents and caregivers should be educated on how to support the child. Again, that can also come from the counselor or the therapist, including listening without judgment, maintaining open communication, and reassuring the child that they are not to blame for the abuse. School and community resources, engaging with school counselors. I have worked with a ton of school counselors, and let me tell you, they are amazing. It's very important in my book to correspond with the school counselors, because if your child starts acting out in class, I know they're the child victim is what we're speaking of, but they might start acting out through behaviors that might show up negatively related to the abuse from the other child. And if the school counselor is unaware of what has happened, they might have trouble trying to help the child work through it, okay? So please connect with your school counselors and let them know what has happened so they mentally can be prepared. They're not going to run and tell the teacher everything. Everything's confidential, unless you tell them otherwise. But it gives them a better grasp maybe on why all of a sudden this child has big anger issues, or why all of a sudden this child is acting out, maybe even acting out sexually on what they learned on another child. Or again, maybe why this child all of a sudden is crying all the time, or just a change in their behavior. To me, it's very important you connect with the school counselors at the school where your child goes. Okay? All right. Let me throw that one out there. Okay. So engaging with school counselors, child advocacy centers, and community resources can provide additional support and services tailored to the child's needs. Education on healthy boundaries, teaching the child about healthy boundaries and respectful relationships can help them rebuild trust and understand appropriate interactions versus what happened to them as being appropriate. Actually, that was inappropriate. Patience and understanding. Healing from trauma is a gradual process. It's important for caregivers and professionals to be patient and understanding, recognizing that setbacks can occur. And if setbacks occur, please continue to be patient with that child. So research indicates that with the right support and interventions, many children are able to heal and lead healthy, productive lives after experiencing abuse. The resilience of children and the availability of effective treatments, contribute to their ability to recover from such traumatic experiences. Now let's talk about helping the perpetrator child. Now keep this in mind. A perpetrator or offending child is acting out on another child. They were not born knowing how to do all this stuff. It's learned behavior, generally. They've seen it on TV, or they've seen grown-ups do it, or they've seen older siblings, teenagers, or whatever, or somebody has done something to that child, okay? Please keep that in mind. They were not born knowing how to do these behaviors. It is learned behavior. Something has happened or they have seen it somewhere, okay? So watch your television shows your children are hanging out with. Wait for the kids to go to bed before you put on those shows. You know what I'm talking about. All right, so teaching boundaries to a child who has sexually abused another child requires a compassionate and structured approach. So here's some steps that you can take to help your kids, to help the offending child. Definitely seek professional help. Engage a child psychologist or a therapist who specializes in treating children with problematic sexual behaviors. Professional guidance is crucial for addressing the underlying issues and teaching appropriate behaviors. Education on body autonomy. Teach the child about body autonomy and the importance of respecting their own and others' personal space. Use age-appropriate language to explain that everyone has the right to feel safe and comfortable in their own body. Set clear and consistent boundaries. Establish clear rules about appropriate and inappropriate behaviors. Be specific about what is acceptable. Ask them for permission before touching someone. Can I give you a hug? Before you lay a hand on them. And then what is not acceptable or what is inappropriate, touching private parts or engaging in sexual play. Consistency is key in reinforcing these boundaries. Use positive reinforcement. Reinforce positive behavior with praise and rewards. Acknowledge and reward the child when they respect boundaries and demonstrate appropriate interactions. Teach empathy. Help the child understand how their actions affect others. Encourage them to think about how the other child might feel and to practice empathy. Role-playing scenarios can be an effective tool for teaching empathy and appropriate responses. Supervise interactions. Ensure that the child's interactions with other children are supervised until they demonstrate a consistent understanding and respect for boundaries. This supervision helps prevent further incidents and allows for immediate correction if inappropriate behavior occurs. Educational resources. Use books, videos, and programs designed to teach children about safe and respectful behaviors. Resources from organizations like Stop It Now and Darkness to Light can be particularly helpful. Please go to those websites and check them out. Okay, I highly encourage you to do that. Ongoing communication. Keep open lines of communication with the child, and I've said this through numerous podcasts. Regularly discuss the importance of boundaries and consent. Create an environment where the child feels safe to ask questions and express their feelings. Create a safe environment. Ensure the child is in a safe and structured environment. Supervise their interactions with other children to prevent further incidents taking place and provide opportunities for positive social interactions under guidance. Address underlying issues. Many children who engage in harmful sexual behaviors have experienced trauma, abuse, or exposure to inappropriate content, and I mentioned this earlier. Addressing those underlying issues through therapy and support is essential for their healing and behavioral change. Teach and model positive behaviors. Model respect and appropriate behaviors in your interactions. Children learn by observing adults. So demonstrate how to ask for consent, respect boundaries, and communicate effectively. It's just like I mentioned earlier, as far as like the hugging. Ask your child before you give them a hug. Say, we're going to practice this. Say, may I give you a hug? Because I'm going to put my hands on you. And if they say yes, give them a hug. But if they say no, you know what? Mama, daddy, caregiver, you need to respect that. You need to say, okay, I won't give you a hug because you said no. So anyway, y'all can work something out on that one. Develop coping skills. Teach the child healthy ways to cope with emotions such as anger, frustration, or curiosity. Activities like the deep breathing techniques, physical exercise, and creative expression can actually help them manage their feelings in a constructive way. Involve the school and community. Work with school counselors and community resources to ensure the child receives comprehensive support. Schools can provide additional educational resources and counseling services to help the child. Now, remember, I'm also now referring to the perpetrator child, the offender child, not the victim child. Because earlier I mentioned the victim child. You also need to tell the school counselor about what happened to them, because they may have behavior changes. In this situation, I'm talking about the offender or the perpetrator child. You need to tell the school counselor definitely about that situation so they can, do positive reinforcement. I noticed you had a good day today. I noticed you kept your hands to yourself. I noticed, you didn't act out in class. They need positive reinforcement through the school. Plus, maybe if the child is feeling the urge to do something bad, to do something inappropriate, let me reword that. The instructions may be given to the child. Whenever you feel like you have an urge to do something inappropriate, maybe you need to go to the school counselor and y'all talk about it. So then you have somebody at the school as well as hopefully at home that this child will have that they can talk to, okay, to help them work through this part that they're dealing with. So, okay, I hope I haven't completely confused you. So the information I just gave you was mainly focusing on how to help the offender child. And these are kids, okay? And like I said, the offender child was not born knowing how to offend or perpetrate on other children. That is learned behavior. Something's either happened to them, they've seen it on TV, they've seen grown-ups do it, they've seen something, or something, like I said, has happened to them. Now, often through an investigation, the child may disclose that something did happen to them. Even though the investigation is primarily on the victim child, the law enforcement and DFACS may choose to also investigate the offender child to find out why they're doing what they're doing, okay? Just want to toss that out there. So don't be surprised if you hear, well, we want to do a forensic interview on your child, okay? Because they're just trying to find out what's going on, why all of a sudden they're acting out on these other kids, okay? So don't panic. Just say, yes, I would like to know as well, so move forward and then they can help you get the help you need to help your child. I hope that makes sense. If not, shoot me an email and I'll try to help you out as best I can, or I'll send you to somebody else that can. Okay, I think I am fixing to wrap this one up for today. But before I do, I want to highly encourage you to begin educating your children, definitely on body safety, but making sure they don't touch other kids. So they need body boundaries as well for themselves and for other kids. Because I'm telling you, if you have a 12-year-old acting out on a 4-year-old, your 12-year-old, they get past that certain age, they could end up going to like a youth detention center or something. Okay? So start educating them early. Just want to throw that out there. So, okay, shoot me an email at csapreventionbyzina@gmail.com if you have any questions, or if you would like additional information, or if you want to provide me with additional information or other helpful websites. You can visit our private Facebook group. Remember that whether you learn child sexual abuse from me or from someone else, please learn it from somewhere. There's some very informative podcasts, blogs, local education on the subject offered in your own community. I'll say your very own community. Just check around. It's out there. Please don't forget to take good care of you and remember that you are important and you matter. And of course, thanks for looking out for all those kids out there, from babies to tweens to teens. Looking forward to tossing some more information your way next week. Thanks for listening. Have a super weekend.
Don't forget me say, I appreciate it.